So hello and welcome to another episode of What Does It Mean to Be Human? I'm Ron Saylor, joined by my co-host Ben Gare. And on this podcast, we talk about life, meaning, and everything about what it means to be human. And today we've got a bit of a good episode for you. So it's a bit of a doozy. So I'll just throw it over to Ben. Ben, how you doing, mate? What's been happening?
Yeah, been good, man. Definitely feels like there's stuff churning in the background. Yeah, again, I still haven't quite got a handle on it yet. I'm due for a meeting with one of my coaches to give me some feedback. So yeah, I'm sort of just feeling quite confronted by old stories. Maybe is probably what is there for me. Again, I won't quite go there yet because it's not solidified in form. Yeah, I'm always happy to share. And once I get clarity, I'm able to give you guys clarity onto insight and how I unpacked it and what does that actually look like, in my day-to-day process of, figuring out what's the next level of me being human and unpacking my limiting beliefs or structures or things that have not served me or don't serve me any longer. They've served me up until a point, and now it's trying to get over it and move on. So yeah, to me, in my world, it's a little bit more on sort of the work side and the business side and things like that. So how does any of that resonate with you, mate?
Resonates well. Yeah, definitely. There must be a theme for the day, right? Because I'm feeling rather confronted myself. And what I got about what you're sharing is, how our podcasts normally go is, we're not afraid to drop into our vulnerability. We're not afraid to share where we're at and our experience and what we go through and what we've been through. Because for us, it's all about the learning. And when we learn something, we want to apply it in order to be successful and either moving through it or maybe having a different insight around it. So for me, what's been happening is I feel like, I'm going through a moment, like something to do with it. We've got the spring equinox coming up, the time of change in the seasons and the energy is changing, or whatever it may be. But I've just noticed over the last week or so, my energy has been a little bit corrupted in the sense, not corrupted, but it hasn't been as grounded, right? And that's been around my relationship to the feminine on the energetic level, right? In its true essence, and how it translates into the physical world with my relationship to my mother and my relationship to my wife, and obviously the relationships I've had with the women in my life throughout the years. And what I'm really starting to see is that, for me personally, I believe, we're given opportunities here as individuals to have a human experience, and essentially that's what we talk about on this podcast. And for me, one of those human experiences is to learn a life lesson that I may have not learned in previous lives, or something that I still need to really find a deep meaning and understanding in order for me to transcend or pass to go into the next stage of my life, right? And what I've been getting is this sense of needing to dominate women. And when I say it, it sounds really bad. It sounds like, fuck, he sounds like an asshole. And to be true, for, when I was young, I was an asshole to women. And that's only because I didn't know how to treat women, because I never had any role models around it. But I'm also aware that, I created that life for myself. I chose my parents. I chose the family to come into. I believe, we come as direct lights, as energy spirits, and we come into human form, and, we have a human experience. And whether or not you believe that, that's fine. You don't have to, right? It doesn't matter. But that's what I believe. And for me, one of my lessons is really making a relationship around the feminine, the energetic side, and my own feminine within myself, right? This the polarity that we talk about, the yin yang, the masculine, the feminine, And I've always been rather masculine, but throughout the years, I've tapped into that feminine side. And there's a lot of power in that, right? It's a lot of power in knowing how to dance between the two. But what's happened and translated is, there's been a chip on my shoulder where I've kind of thought I'm actually smarter than women, I'm better than women, and sometimes translates into men as well. Whether that's an energetic thing, it could be, And so what's coming up in my face, right? Like right in my face is that this sense of me trying to control. And I see how I do it with my wife. I see how I do it with my mum. I think I know better than they do. So I want to control them. I want to control the situation. Part of me is like, well, I'm trying to keep you safe. This is the story that comes up. But really all it is saying is that I'm not in my power. So let me dominate you in order to feel in my power. Let me strip your power away.
Yeah.
So this is the story. This is the dialogue that's going on. And I'm kind of like, over the weekend, I was really confronted with it at how many times I noticed myself in periods where I'd be talking with my wife and wanting to actually dominate the situation. And it can be as simple as sitting down watching television together, yet I'm holding the remote control in my hand. And for some of you, you might say, well, who cares? That doesn't mean shit, right? But on a very subtle level, what's the message I'm sending out to my wife? I'm in control here. I have the remote. I'll choose what we get to watch. And the flip side is she may be watching something and then I'll just come in and go and start flicking. I don't ask her, you finished watching this show? I just do that. And what's my interpretation? Well, she's on her phone, so she mustn't be watching TV. The dialogue, the story, the creation, the assumption, the perception, right? This is what's coming up. And I'm aware of the fact that there's nothing right, wrong, good, or bad in what's going on, nor am I condoning or validating what's going on. It is what it is. I'm exploring how I create something, how I try to navigate my shit, my belief patterns, my dysfunctions. And at the moment, it's kind of like, I'm still kind of processing, right? So I'm kind of like raw in the moment. So my sharing is fairly like in the moment. There's nothing premeditated here. It's just what's going on. This is what's coming up for me. So I'm kind of in this process of learning how I am and how I've been throughout the years. And there's a big part of me that feels sad, right? I feel sad as in how I've done this, and I think about all the women, and not necessarily women I've been with, just friends, and how I've treated them. And like, you get all this backlog of story and memories and images and dialogue that has gone on. And, there's a part of me that wants to fall into the boohoo and feel sorry for myself or make myself wrong. And I'm aware of it. And I'm aware that it's a possibility and I may go into it, right? But I'm also aware that it's there to serve me, to give me an offering, an opportunity to learn something. And this is where I want to step into this. I want to step into this as a powerful individual, not as coming from my story or being the victim of the circumstances that have been put before me. So that's kind of what I've been processing, mate. I mean, that's a lot, and I've given you a full mouthful there. But look, give me some sharing, give me some what comes up for you around that.
Yeah, so I suppose it's a topic I know very, very well, and I feel like I want to just kind of fill in some blanks for the listeners and at least my perspective, and maybe you'll get your own insights there, and maybe I'll then just see if you want to kind of dive into having a look at whatever's coming up there. I come from a tantric background, and I don't want to get into the politics of what Tantra is, because Tantra is probably not what anybody thinks it is. It's usually got nothing to do with sexuality. But regardless, that's the background that I've got. I've spent sort of 18 years in and around a tantric scene. So it's given me a deep dive into polarity in basic terms of masculine and feminine, and this has got nothing to do with male bodies or female bodies. These are the raw essences of what is masculinity, what is femininity, and to realize that we have both within us. We have the capacity for either. We tend to develop one polarity as the dominant one because and it may be related to our actual gender or physical body, But it doesn't necessarily have to be. You can get obviously quite feminine males and quite masculine females, and whatever gamut in between that. This is I'm not talking about gender politics. I'm not talking about sexuality preferences. I'm talking about literally everybody has both a masculine and a feminine pole within them, you know, and it pays to really start to look at yourself from those different poles, and because it gives you a greater capacity to understand yourself, and then by proxy everybody around you as well, in fact. And yeah, the questions that kind of come up when you were so it's how in depth do I want to go? That's why I'm just kind of questioning, what do I share? We tend to have, as we grow up and trauma happens and we maybe have complete families, we don't have complete families, we're constantly creating stories, you know, and part of the protecting self is to compartmentalize things and to almost split from certain aspects of self. Because again, the brain is trying to keep functioning. So therefore, it's like, that's too much, that's too hard. I need to put that on the side for now, because if I was to unpack all of that right in this moment, I either might not have the skills or capacity to do it, or it might not be appropriate because I don't have the time and the space to actually give it the attention it really needs to go into what is the meaning behind X, Y, Z. And so often you'll hear of things like inner child work, and it's often healing those splits from self, where a part of you was hurt, traumatized, built a story, whatever, and to keep itself safe is put a bubble around that age or that aspect of self to keep functioning today. And I feel this is exactly what we do with our genders, with our masculinity and femininity. And it's often due to our gender, because we're kind of told that big boys don't cry, girls are sensitive, or whatever the story is, you know. So we have these kind of archetypes that are true. And to me, so the masculine is it's a steady, penetrating force, is directional, is looking for doing. It's an active trait, shall we say. And the feminine is more about flow, creativity, emotions, being a bit more present to what is. Like the masculine is a disciplined, we're going to get here, whereas the feminine is a bit more of the being intuitive and aware of the moment and operating from that sort of angle. And due to whatever story we've created around our parents, or we don't have both poles as representations in our life, or one person that's trying to hold both poles as the only representation we've got in a parental model, we tend to overdevelop one aspect to the neglect of the other. So it sounds to me like in your sharing, you're saying you've highly developed your masculine, so it tends to be where you're at for the most part, and underdeveloped the inner feminine, which you said you've only had a couple of years looking into the journey of marrying that part of self, you know. So, and I think to become a holistic human being, we really do need to actually literally marry those two internal poles within self, because again, it gives you greater access to being able to share from one or the other and know which one they are. So And again, because we have these internal processes and some can be stunted due to not recognizing that we have both. In my reality, I've been able to develop a conscious relationship with both my masculine and my feminine as separate entities. And I can pick their developmental ages to that degree. And I'm able to be built up because my feminine was so abandoned within myself because I wasn't trying to acknowledge it. I was trying to push it away. It felt abandoned. And so I felt its developmental age wasn't as strong or in parallel with my masculine internal pole. And it was about kind of shoring those up and going more into how do I balance the feminine? So doing more creative projects or more, using my developing my intuition more, less needing to know and more going into flow and surrender of like being open to what is as opposed to needing to direction. So yeah, I just kind of felt like I wanted to bring that background and see whatever, if anything came up for you there, and I could dive a bit deeper into what any of that means or help you unpack something that may be there for you. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I mean, look, I like that bit you were sharing about the masculine feminine energy, right? And essentially that's what we come as, right? With that dualism of both, and we'll naturally dominate, or not dominate, we'll kind of like tend to gravitate to one more than the other.
Yeah.
And I agree. Look, for me, over the last maybe 8 months or so, I've been focusing on a lot of more intuitive processes, trying to get more in touch with that feminine side, really allowing intuition to come through, and not so much being in my head or needing to fix things or needing to have it a certain way, really trying to open up to that process. And I think because of that, right? I think because of that process, now this kind of comes up in my face more, because my feminine is kind of like coming to the forefront and going, look, this is, I want you to have a look at this thing that you're not aware of. Yeah, okay, you've kind of had some awareness on some level, but we're kind of like stripping it now. We're kind of like fleshing it out. If you can imagine, like if we were building something, right? And you only could build, let's say we're building a car, right? A model car, but we didn't have all the pieces. So that car's kind of like, that's not complete, right? And this is why I feel like my pieces are coming in now. So I'm completing this picture. So this picture is going to be, because this is quite fresh in the moment, I'm still kind of like trying to work it out, because I'm still navigating, how am I going in my day to day? Am I responding, or am I just reacting? Am I reacting from a place of fear? Am I reacting from a place of powerlessness? Am I reacting from a place of worthiness? And a lot of this is based on my own self-belief about myself, based on the upbringing I had and the stories I made. So for me, it's all about, and when I did a meditation, I did an intuition about this, and it was clear, this comes from a place of being powerless. It's not been a place of power. So even though I may have come across and been masculine orientated, is that masculine orientated come a place of where I know who I am as a powerful individual, or is it coming from a place where I feel powerless? So in order to be powerful, I need to dominate. And that's where it's been coming from. So for me, it's really like tapping into the subtleties of both, and knowing how to dance between the two, and knowing when either of them is coming up. So I can actually just sit and acknowledge that, you know what, right now I'm being powerless. So I'm looking to dominate. I'm looking to be like this. I'm looking to control. I'm looking to fix. Let me help you. Let me save you. To when I'm feeling powerful, it's like, well, you know what? There's nothing to fix. There's nothing to save. It is what it is. Let me just hold the space. Let me just hold the space, and it will just come out. Details will just happen. This is one thing I'm learning, right? It's like, and I guess this kind of all comes back to learning who I am as a person, as a human being. The more I know myself, the more I don't need to look for the outside to fill my inside. My inside is creating enough to fill the outside. And I guess that's how I kind of separate. When I'm in power, I'm coming from the inside out. When I'm feeling powerless, I'm trying to control everything outside of me, so I feel like I've got some kind of control inside of me. And that's the polarity in the dance that I'm kind of going through, and not just with the feminine, really my whole life, but it's interesting how it translates across all aspects of life, all aspects of being human, all aspects in our day to day, all aspects in how we wake up, start our day, end our day. And for me, it's just really becoming aware of that, to the point that yesterday my energy was so dense that I slept most of the day. I had like, it was one of those things. I had like 4 cancellations in the span of 24 hours. Then I had like, a few clients, and I had the afternoon off. And so I just went home and I slept most of the day because I was just so tired, just fatigued, and not from anything that I've been doing anything extra. Just the energy was so dense because it had finally slapped me in the face and said, "Oi, wake up." And here I am, mate. So I don't know what you get out of that, but that's kind of like where, that's kind of where it's been, what's been happening.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of go back to where you had said, as you'd started to turn the attention to your inner feminine, it feels like it's been presented more in your world. And that's just something I wanted to clarify for people, that it's kind of how this life beautifully manifests in front of you, that as soon as you start to put your attention to these weird synchronistic events come that are not so weird and synchronistic, if you're kind of aware of and conscious of you are the creator of your own life. So
yeah,
life is constantly giving you the opportunity to face the shadows and face the bits we neglect or we put behind or don't give the attention that it really deserves to heal at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I found it interesting that you said, as you've been turning your attention to how your relationship with the feminine, how it started to come up more and more in your face. And yeah, I just want to normalize that for people. That's kind of how it works, because again, as soon as you're having a focal point that this is something I want to heal, don't be surprised if it starts to pop up quite a lot in your reality, because it's going, hey, I'm here, I still exist, can we now integrate back into the whole, as opposed to being stuck in this fixed idea of what things are or should be. So that was kind of the first point that I wanted to bring up there. Is anything come up for you within that?
One thing that comes to mind is how does this translate on a physical level and an interactive level with your partner, right? So naturally, I have my beautiful wife. She's the one who's kind of copying all this sort of stuff, right? She's kind of like in the forefront. And we had a conversation the other day, and I was fleshing this out with her, and naturally, things come up, and she may get triggered and go into her story about this, or go into her meaning around this, her perception about this sort of stuff. And for me, it's kind of important to try and navigate, how do I allow myself to flesh this out without making myself right, wrong, good, or bad, because it is what it is. I'm putting myself here to learn, right? And my job is to learn, to go deeper into my heart, because when I go into my heart, I create anything I want. So it's about, how do I navigate this with my wife so she understands what I'm going through, so we have an open communication. But like I said to her, it's not that easy, right? Because she's still going to feel this stuff, and she's still going to get emotional. So for me, it's kind of like, I'm still like treading and trying to understand, what are some tools, what are some methods where we're both keeping ourselves grounded, we're both keeping ourselves anchored, connected, not making the other person wrong, giving that person space, but just acknowledging that what's going on is going on. But we're not going to validate, I'm not asking her to validate my behavior or say, oh, it's okay, Ron, don't worry, keep doing it, because that's not what it's about. It's about acknowledging, look, you know what, I'm doing it again, I'm really sorry. I'm doing it again. I'm really sorry. Yeah, and then it's like she may say to me, yeah, but how many times are you going to keep telling me you're sorry? It's like, I don't really know, because I've never done this before, right? This is kind of like right in my face. So I'm kind of learning as I go. So it's kind of important to be gentle, right? Just be gentle with yourselves. I need to be gentle with myself, with my wife. She needs to be gentle with herself, with me. And it's not always going to be that, because we might just like arc up and have a go, but it's how do we come back? So, I'm kind of like riding a roller coaster at the moment, to be honest, mate. So it's kind of like, I'll probably have over the next week or so, I'll probably have a bit more fleshing out. I'll probably have a bit, have more tangible kind of wording around it, how it kind of sits more into my body and stuff like that. But for now, that's kind of where it's at, mate.
Yeah, look, there's two major points that I want to kind of clarify within any of that. It's like this is why we pick conscious relationships at the end of the day. It's not just for you, but just for the audience to understand that to truly have a partner on this journey, there has to be at least some understanding. You don't have to be on the same path, but you have to at least be clear enough with each other to be able to, step up that communication to a level that I'm sharing this from. This is where I am at, what I'm trying to heal, what I'm doing, and recognizing that part of it can be done alone, and part of it is the journey of connecting with our significant partner, because partners have that beautiful ability to scratch the absolute itch that is the one that's going to trigger you. Because they're the closest thing in your world. They are the represent. Love brings up anything other than itself. So the deeper we go into love, the more we're going to get those neglected little weird bits of ourselves get agitated, and they want to come up and lash out. And who do they generally lash out as? The closest person in front of us, closest person to us, maybe not specifically in front, but and partners are that beautiful learning of how to navigate things consciously. So that's one where, as I say, I want to just kind of, this is why we do conscious relating at the end of the day, and that's a big part of it. And then the other part is, we've talked about this before, sometimes where you can retroactively go back into a memory or use what's in front of you to process what's going on. It's either external or internal at the end of the day. Like, you can dive deep into self and go into regression sessions or whatever works for you to heal a certain kind of story, or to actively use the exterior to dive into a story and process it with another, if we're talking in this scenario. And it sounds like, for me, when you were sharing, it's like, this one's going to be more internal. If you want to save, for want of a better word, your partner from all of the shit, it's partly going to be having a look at, where do you dominate your internal feminine, or where are you having to need control over your internal process? Because again, it's less about the external, because that's just the safety mechanism of how we control our reality and how we keep things so narrow, because it's within our bandwidth of like, well, I could deal with that because it's only a parameter of this big. And I know that, so therefore I'm not going to stretch outside of that, and I can keep in control of it. I've totally lost my train of thought, but it sounds like that there's a bit of an internal journey that needs to happen into your own feminine within this, would be my suggestion to you. of trying to find within self, where do you restrict that feminine aspect of you? Because then that will start to, again, trickle out and filter into the world. Anything coming up there?
Yeah, man, 100%. I'm all about, it starts with you, right? Everything starts with you at the end of the day. If you can't start here inside and work your way out, personally, I don't feel like I'm ever going to really find that truth in myself. So a lot of it is internal, 100%. And most of my work will be internal. There is just that, at this stage is combination, because, as we're saying, the reaction and the physicality of it is going to still make its way into the relationship, especially as I start to become more aware of these little subtle mechanisms that have been put in place. So the power is with, the individual. And I always say, it all starts with us on the inside, and it works its way. Once you know who you are, once you start to really acknowledge your power and your creativity and everything that's about you, whether it's good, bad, ugly, whatever you want to call it, right or wrong, whatever terms you like to use. For me, it's all there. It's all to be acknowledged. And that's where truth and power and healing comes from. Because once we focus on the inside, we don't need to focus on the outside, because that just sorts itself out. Then it's how do we just, process this information coming? Because essentially it's all information, right? Memories, images, dialogue, experiences, it's all some level of information that's sensory that we've had to experience, that we, like you say, Ben, we catalog, we put in a place so we know how it feels, the conditioning, the mindset, what we need to do to keep ourselves safe. It's all information. So for me, information is always going to come from the inside. And look, you know what? It's true. When you tune into intuition, you're really tapping into the feminine. And I'm really like, the last probably 8 months or so, I do intuition work twice a week. And I spend time, and I really like, have the right process and really focused in the questions. And I don't judge, and I don't judge what comes through, and I don't question what comes through. I just make it up. I just allow intuition just to come through. Allow them to answer my question, my spirit guides or whoever comes through. And I just let that happen. And it's not even about trusting the process, it's about just listening and knowing that listening is okay and that there's nothing for me to do. So, mate, I agree with you 100%, right? I think this will be a journey for me, because it's kind of, even though I've been doing this for a while, it's kind of like, this is kind of like just come to the forefront. So I think it's still in that raw stage. And as I'm finding, like, grounding in it and finding my feet in it, and just, dropping into my heart and really just opening up, I think more come to the surface. Because along with that, what I'm kind of processing right now is a fair bit of sadness. And I think that sadness is just from, part of it is like how I've been throughout the years physically, like the memories that come up, or how I've reacted, how I've treated, how I've behaved. And the other one is kind of like more like a deep grief, like, well, this spiritual grief, but it's almost like this joyous, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like bordering on two worlds of joy and grief, where like there's that deep part of me, like this feminine part that's going, thank you for waking the fuck up and seeing me, right? It's almost like, you're seeing me for the first time. It's almost, so there's as much as like my old story of sadness based on my experience and my behavior. There's something which is kind of almost new, in a sense of like, when people say I'm crying because I'm happy, that kind of sense of like, hello, I see you, thank God, let's work together. So I feel like I'm about to embark on a whole new journey of awakening, whole new journey of opening, whole new journey of going deeper into my heart as a man, right? As a man who had no, like a thwarted upbringing, whatever it may have been, the story. I'm not going to go into it. We've shared into it before. But whatever it is, it's almost like coming back. It's almost like, for me, it's like coming into full circle of what it means to be human. And that's, for me, I feel like as much as I've had the density and like the arguments and all that, underlining is just a beautiful sense of awakening. And I feel, I feel blessed to have that. So I'm looking forward to the next few days, next week too, to see how it all fleshes out.
Yeah. And it's for you and for anybody else, like part of it will be just catching the autopilot and just switching that part off. As soon as you generally, when you're wanting to heal something or you've got a built pattern that you pattern interrupt, so you stop a thought process, and maybe this is helpful for you, but anyone else out there, it's like, how would my masculine react in this scenario? How would my feminine react in this scenario? And that's another way that you can start to build that relationship with who wants to do what, because they're competing energies within yourself. Because the one will be operating a certain kind of way, directness, logical, very masculine, just like this is how it is. And the other one will be trying to, where's the emotion within it? Where's the intuition? What am I feeling? You know, so and starting to play with that. And I've lived a long time in operating from both of those to build them up. And this is what I say about the age discrepancy between the two internal poles, which I've found in myself. And starting to give equal opportunity to have a look at what that, don't have to change what you're doing, but just as a mental process to start to have a look at, oh, that's how my feminine would react in this scenario. This is how my masculine would react in this scenario. Then you have choice. And this is why I say that it's great to build these ideas and these concepts within self, because then you've got a greater capacity to choose how you're going to react. This is not about having the autopilot always on and you're just operating the same old all the time and going from there. So yeah, that's one little trick that you can have a look at.
That's a great trick, man. I'm definitely going to be using that. That's awesome. I hope our listeners really understand what you're saying about that, because that's such a great thing to do. And, that's in everyday life where you feel you may be confronted or something. It may not be feminine, masculine. I mean, naturally, in this instance, that's the content of the podcast. It may be just in everyday life. How do you navigate? How do you respond? Noticing your autopilot, as you're saying, Ben, like noticing our go-tos, our sets of conditions that has to be a certain way, it has to look a certain way before we can navigate our way out of it. So, mate, that's great. I'm glad you shared that bit, because that just landed with me. So it's like, boom, right? So it's like, now I can like use that. It's like as another connection to the feminine, right? I might even give them a name each. Who knows, mate? I might go into a meditation and get to know who they are and see if they have names. And then I can ask them.
This is exactly what I've done, and this is stuff that I've been trained with. I teach people. They have individual personalities, and in my experience, and they do have distinct styles. My feminine is actually the shield maiden. She's actually the warrior. Like, she's tough as fucking nails, and my yeah, it's this weird kind of paradox of like, she's actually the scary one, and he's the stable one. that's like moving forward and in the stillness and in the direction, but holding that masculine pole for the feminine warrior within me is personally how I experience, which is kind of weird, interesting little juxtapose. But yeah, definitely I've had many experiences of giving them names, ages, checking in with who they are. And the more you can start to do that, the personality actually starts to flesh out. And for anyone that wants to kind of just know a little bit more, the left side of your body is generally considered the feminine. The right side of the body is considered the masculine. If it helps you, just, these are not hard and fast rules. Like that, it is just how I've learned to understand it, and take it or leave it as you like, but by distinctly looking at things as the left as the feminine and the right is because it's again about the brain hemispheres, how the left side is the logical, analytical, mathematic, whereas the right side is the creative, artistic, intuitive, and they cross at the eyes, the energetics cross at the eyes and becomes right brain is left side of the body, left brain, right side of the body, masculine, feminine. Another little one that people may be interested in if you're into astrology. So we're not all just like, you're a Leo and that's it. That is just your sun sign. So most people probably know their astrological dominant sun sign, but if you go get a chart done, or you can just go on astro.com, it's free, and get a full breakdown of all the planets in your chart if you know the time of birth and all that kind of thing. You're able to flesh out a full astrological chart of where the planets were when you're aligned when you were at your birth. And there's 2 planets that actually denote your masculine and your feminine. And so they can actually give you insights into the personality of each as well. So your whatever planet you have in Venus is your feminine, and whatever planet you have in Mars is your masculine. And again, that might just give you just little hints at how to dial in or tune in to that aspect of self as an individual personality, as a kind of interesting little play with reality. So you could find that your feminine is a Taurus and operating from that very sensual kind of place, whereas your masculine is a Leo, and so is very kind of dominant and very forward, and they're like that's how it is, and then trying to get those 2 to communicate with each other. So it's kind of a weird little interesting one if you're super into astrology or that kind of thing, or it's just even as a fun little way to have a look at reality in a slightly different way and see if it works for you. Because again, I don't do hard and fast rules. That like, these are just ideas and concepts. If they resonate with you, great. If they don't, that's cool too. Because I don't think anybody really knows what reality is. I think we're all just trying to figure it out. And some of these tools are ancient and maybe there's some merit in them for you, but your path is your path. So it really doesn't matter. It's about whatever helps you get back closer to self. And that's another little way. So how's that sound for you?
Mate, it sounds pretty good. I think if you can, maybe in the notes, just put that website out for people if they want to go and explore that for themselves.
Yeah.
So I think, let's wrap up the show for today. It's been a pretty good show. We could probably keep going on, and I think next week we may follow up from this and see how we go. It's been a pleasure as always to share from the heart with you, Ben, and our listeners. And any questions, any feedback, feel free to put it in the comment section. And we'll see you guys next week. Stay safe, stay well, and stay powerful.
Yeah, I just quickly want to share, again, we didn't plan this, but I'm actually teaching Polarity workshops and partner connections. So if any of this resonates or you want to dive deeper into it, I'll be holding full day workshops throughout October, November, end of this year. So if that's something that people want to look into, again, this has been my background for quite some time. So happy to always share and you'll hear more here, but if you want to dive deep into an embodied practice of how that looks, feel free to reach out. And thank you, Ron, for being vulnerable and sharing what's going on for you, and hear from you next week.
Yeah, man. I was going to say, Ben, put it on your socials for people who want to find out more about
Absolutely.
that. So
it's there. It's just when this will come out, whether it lines up or not. So like it's in a few weeks, and because we don't release this for a few weeks, just kind of who knows how that's going to look. But it's there.
All right.
They'll be a regular.
Right,
so thank you.